Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We will begin in 1 second. I just want to ask you one question, and I'm going to start a question. I know this is not a part of the questions they're going to be asking, but my question for you all would be, are you stressed about coming back to work, going into communities? Are you stressed that their states are opening up? How do you feel? And how is it impacting you? So please respond in the chat on that. Again, thank you again for coming today and taking this webinar, for joining us. I'm Floribella Redondo. I'm the Executive Director for the Arizona Community Health Workers Association. And I wanna thank Kenya Zuniga for helping us with putting all the webinars together. Our presenter, Millie Gomez, for coming in with a great topic today, where we're discussing what she's gonna be talking, and I was really excited to hear everything that she has to say. And really happy that there's so much information, there's so much things that we can talk about, but the most important thing that we're always looking at is fulfilling the need that you all have, fulfilling the need, the information that we need to bring to you. It's so important that we all talk about that need. We're all in the same boat. We're all suffering the same anxiety, the same stress, the same isolation by being at home. We all want to continue with our normal life, but how does it look like? From here on, how do we go about during our life, our normal life, and what is normal now? We want to talk about what do we need to do to take care of ourselves, but also how can we respond to that need as a CHW association, as an organization that has been working with CHWs, promotores, CHRs for many, many years? How can we respond? How can we help? How can we support? Please let us know. Please provide us your information, your ideas. We want to make sure that we bring everything that we bring is really fulfilling the need that you and we all have in our communities. Again, thank you for connecting. And with that, Kenya, can we change the slide, please? The next one is Kenya.
I don't know what is happening with my computer. Does it want to change? Sorry about that.
That's fine. Okay, technical difficulties.
Yes.
Can we just, and then I just want to say again, thank you, Millie, for connecting with us. Thank you for being so available to come and bring this information to our CHWs. Kenya has now allowed you to share your screen so you can begin with your presentation. I know that you have a lot to provide to us today, and we're really happy. I'm asking you all to please respond to the poll that we have, and so we can get your ideas, your information, so we can respond to that need that I was mentioning a little while ago. And with that, I just want to say thank you, Millie, and welcome, and the floor is yours, Millie.
Thank you. So I didn't put an intro to my presentation, so those of you that don't know me, my name is Millie Gomez. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Arizona. I am nationally certified counselor. I am certified in somatic experiencing, which means that to me, the mind and the body go together, and understanding that connection really has made a difference in how I treat people and how I see overall health. So I'm really excited about this topic today, because I'll start going into a little bit deeper about that connection and how to take care of ourselves during this very stressful time. They're very uncertain times, and if most of you are like myself, I like certainty and I like to know what's gonna happen next. So obviously this has thrown off many of us. So hopefully some of these techniques will help us in a way, what we call come back to our bodies and listen to what our bodies are feeling, so that we can try to process the emotions that we're holding. So I wanted to start I'm all about the nervous system. And if we understand the nervous system, we can really understand where our emotions are at. So I wanted to start with this to really get a good understanding of where our physiology is, so that we can then decide what is it that I need to do to take care of myself so I can feel a little bit less stressed. So when we talk about the nervous system, we talk about the fight, flight, or freeze response. And we're talking in this specific slide about the window of tolerance. And I talked a little bit about that on my previous presentation last week about the window of tolerance. And is this, we're wanting to expand our window. Some people have a very small window, so that means that they'll either jump into the flight or freeze response back and forth. And some people have a higher tolerance and will be able to tolerate a lot more. That tolerance comes from our history. So if I have a history of a lot of distress and trauma, my window might tend to be smaller. So my capacity to hold a lot of uncertainty is going to be a lot less. So when we're talking about the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, we're talking about people who are feeling anxiety. And if the anxiety is too much, obviously we're talking about panic and panic attacks. They get startled very quickly. So any loud noise, you see them jumping, they don't know what relax means. So to them, their body's always tense. There might be some pain on their shoulders, their neck, just because the tension, that's where they carry it. They're very restless, so they're always moving, feet moving, hands fidgety. Someone always being on high alert, just kind of waiting for bad things to happen. Digestion problems. That's one of the things I often talk to my clients about, is about how their stomach is doing, because when we're stressed out, that's one of the places where we will notice it the most. Either we're not hungry, our digestion is not the same. We're having problems with constipation or diarrhea. So there's all these physical symptoms that are telling us our stress level is too high. Our eyes, depending on what is going on, they might dilate because they're looking for something. Sweaty palms, feeling like, everything's overwhelming. Chronic pain, and those chronic pain usually is not something that you will feel when you initially start going into this response, but if you're stuck in this response, chronic pain will develop in the long run. Difficulty sleeping, a lot of problems with managing anger, so being hostile, anger outburst, getting very easily frustrated. Your responses might be more defensive, less empathy for others, a lot of compulsive thoughts. So very hard to shut down the thoughts, going over the same thing over and over again, be very impulsive, not being able to think things through. It's one of them, and it's just kind of like, I just had this impulse, I did it, and then people ask you, why did you do that? And you're like, I don't know, I just felt like that's what I needed to do. There's really no logic behind it. That was just an impulse you had. The aggression, we talked about the emotional outbursts, and again, just the feeling of being stuck or trapped. So that is the high part of that physiological response. And you might be able to, like, just by the description, see this is where I'm at right now in one or the other. And then you have in the middle where you are calmer. Doesn't mean necessarily that you're completely calm, but you're calmer, you're able to think, you're able to connect with others, you're able to problem solve, you're able to think things through. And it's where we all hope to be most of the time, but we will have this ups and downs. And that is just part of our physiology. It's impossible just to stay there. We will go up and down. The part that is important is that if we get out of that window, that we could come back to it. And many people are not able to come back to it. And that's where a lot of the problems and symptoms start coming up. And then we talk about the freeze response. And in here, we call it the shutdown state. Your body has been on the high alert, the fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system zone too long. So now it says, I was very activated for too long. Now I need to conserve my energy because this is taking me nowhere. So I go back and then I shut down. My body starts shutting down. And that's where we see the depression. Not a whole lot of facial expression. Somebody just kind of having the same emotion on their face. A lot of apathy, sadness, not wanting to move very much. This might be a person that's sleeping a lot more than usual, feels just kind of shut down, heartbeats slower, problems with memory, concentration. You know, they might even be talking and they just kind of forget what they were going to say. Somebody that gets emotional very easily. A feeling of emptiness, feeling numb. A lot of people, when we talk about this state, you'll have people who are like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't feel anything. And really that's an indication that the person has become numb. And when you become numb, it means that it was so overwhelming that the only way your body knew how to help you was by making you numb. So that means that there's a lot going on inside you, but because it's too much, your body's reacting and helping you in a way by just shutting everything down and making you numb. We talk about the irritation here, digestive problems here as well, overwhelmed, confused, foggy mind, again, looks checked out. That's another coping skill. When people disassociate, they daydream a lot. They kind of lose touch with what's going on in here, and then you be like, hey, I was talking to you. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry. I just kind of spaced out. That's definitely a sign of somebody that is overwhelmed. And we talk about some people just feel stuck in that state. So that's our physiology. And that's something that for the most part is pretty universal of those symptoms and where we are physiologically. So the better that we are at tracking where we are, the easier it'll be to know what we need to do to come back to the middle, to that window of tolerance. So one of the things that affect how much tolerance we have for stress start very, very early. I would say that it starts even when our mothers were pregnant with us. And if our mom was too stressed out, well, that means that we were exposed to stress hormones very early in our lives. And that had an impact. So that leads to maybe being more sensitive to stress because of that, those events that happened before we were even born. So the other thing that affects a lot how we deal with our emotions and how we regulate our bodies has to do with the relationship we have with our parents, that parent-child relationship. It's a huge one. We learn how to manage our emotions from our parents. But if our parents didn't have the tools or they didn't know how to do it, they can't teach us something they don't know. Then that means that we just learn to do what they did, or we kind of figure out eventually what was best, but it might not have been the healthiest thing to do. So this is part of how our physiology and our behaviors start kind of coming together. Obviously diet, our exercise, our stress level, trauma, what we're exposed in the environment, and any illnesses that we might be exposed to, all those affect our emotions and our physiological state. So we talked about how it affects our nervous system, the function of our genes, our DNA, and there's a lot of research behind this. This is not something that I'm making up. This is actually, these two slides are by the Chronic Illness and Trauma Studies Institute. that talk about the impact that stress and trauma has in our bodies. So the other one that, the other slide that I have here that it says, the amygdala is like a guard dog in our brain. He's always asking, am I safe? And that is something, it's a very good way of putting it. Our brain 24/7 is always looking for safety all the time. It's not a lack of threat, which many people get it confused. It's not looking where's the threat, is it not? It's looking for safety, and it's looking for cues of safety. And if there are not enough cues of safety, then it'll turn on the alarm and it'll say you're under threat. And then again, we go into that fight or flight mode or into that freeze state. So those are the only three options that we have, but it's really dependent on what our brain is doing and how our brain got wired from our experiences in growing up. So everything starts coming together. So when we talk about the three states, at this very moment, all of us are in a survival state, or all of us are in survival mode. Whether some feel it more than others, but all of us, we are in this collective experience because everywhere in the world, we're all experiencing this at some level. And what it means to be in survival mode is I am not safe. That's what is the bottom line. And when we are in this state, the front part of your brain, which deals with the logical, analytical part of the brain, gets shut down. That's not accessible. For that front part of your brain to be accessible, you need to feel safe. You need to be in a calmer state. So what takes over is the bottom part right here, which is the limbic system, which is what we call the reptilian brain. And that's the part of the brain that is just worried about keeping us safe. It doesn't care about how. It just cares about how can I keep you safe. And it'll take over. The logic goes out the window. The positive thinking goes out the window. And I'm just worried about staying alive. So when we hear often people say, especially in these situations, we just need to think positive. You know, we have to stay in this positive mood. If that part of your brain is not accessible and I'm just over here and my alarm is on, it's really hard to do. So there's nothing, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's nothing wrong with you because you can think positive things. It's really just your brain saying that right now is not my priority. I have other priorities and my priority is just to stay alive. And to stay alive, part of it is, can I think of the worst case scenarios? Because that will keep me alive. I can prepare for those. And if I think of all those, maybe I'll have a better chance of surviving. So that's why it's so hard to get out of this loop. So and I'll be talking a little bit further down, how can we come back to safety so that that front part of my brain is accessible and I can start taking in the facts and what's really happening around me instead of my brain creating ideas around this fear that I'm carrying with me. So I'm gonna take a little bit of time to see if there are any questions related to what I just went over. If the question doesn't directly relate to what I spoke a few minutes ago, I'll try to answer it at the end as best as I can. But I'm gonna go and just check very quickly if there's anything that it's there. Yes, I have a comment from someone. It says, one of the worst things to tell a client who is feeling stressed is to stay positive. Yes, it's very true. Nope. And I always, when we're talking about de-escalation and trying to help someone calm down, nobody has ever calmed down from being told to calm down or to stay positive, ever. I think the best thing that we can do to help someone start finding safety and get into a better thought frame is to empathize and to validate the emotions that, yes, we are all stressed out. And I can see how stressed out you are. And I can even imagine what you're going through. And you start validating the emotion. And as you validate that emotion, you will see that person being able to move through it. It's not going to change the situation, but you're finding somebody that is understanding you and they get you. And that in itself takes a little bit of that load from feeling overwhelmed. Oh, all of a sudden I have, so yeah, somebody else made that facts are not really available at this time. And yes, there's a lot of information that we don't have. And I'll be talking a little bit more further down about what is under my control and what is not under my control. Because there are a few things that are under our control that we can do, and that's what we can focus on. If I focus a lot on the things I don't have control over, I will get myself very, very overwhelmed. So, okay, somebody asked, what is the best way to get your body out of fight or flight? And I'll be talking a lot about that in the next few slides. Yeah, somebody said it's a good opportunity to learn mindfulness and meditation. And it is. And here's the thing about that. Mindfulness and meditation work if you only have a certain level of activation in your nervous system. If you're extremely activated and you try to do meditation, it's not going to work. If anything, it's going to increase your anxiety because trying to sit with your thoughts for 3 minutes is too much. So that's another thing. You have to be able to find a certain level of activation that feels comfortable for you to try those exercises. And that is part of what I talked about last time. We kind of surpass a certain threshold, and after that, a lot of these coping skills are not going to work. But if we practice them enough, and you have doing mindfulness, which is just staying in the present moment. So I do this with my clients. I have this glass of water and it's cold. And mindfulness is really just about, can I wrap my hands around this glass and can I feel it being cold? And I'll be like, yeah, and that's bringing me to the here and now. Can I take a sip of water and notice how the water passes through my throat and goes into my stomach, and I just feel a little bit fresh inside in my body. That is mindfulness. It's just really, can I bring it back into the small moments in my day? And obviously meditation, there's different ways to meditate, but it's definitely something that if we make it a practice, it will try to keep us in that calmer state. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'll go further and talk a little bit more about covering actually some of the questions that were being asked. So there we go. So one of the things that you could say recently, but it's not very recent, but in the last 20 years, that we are understanding the physiology and how it impacts our emotional state and how it impacts our health. So a big part of this information is based on what we call the polyvagal theory, which is not a theory, but at some point it was. And now we have a lot of research that proves that this is how our body responds to stress. So it's kind of like the same thing that we were talking at the beginning, these 3 states that our body responds. So you have at the bottom what we call the social engagement, the ventral vagal, safety. I'm able to connect, I feel safe, I can look around, and I look around being curious, not scared. And that's a big part of it too, is that can I just look around and wonder and be like, oh, that's an interesting thing, or oh, what's over there, instead of like with that fear of like, oh, what's over there? I don't know, I have to be careful. And here you can be mindful, you can be present. There's all these qualities to being able to connect and engage. When we are under threat, then we have this curve that goes up and you see the fight or flight, which is the danger zone. Our body sensing danger, so it goes up into that zone. And we talked about all those emotional reactions. And then you have the freeze. If it's too much and you're in the sympathetic, and again, there's not a whole lot, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hope, you will go into that state. And the hope is that eventually you come off that curve. And when you come off, you don't just go into the freeze and jump in the sympathetic and go into social engagement. So one of the things that I often tell people is that if you are depressed, part of the process is that you will get anxiety. And then eventually that anxiety will diminish and you will be able to find out a little bit more peace within you. You're not able to skip that step. Everything's connected. Anxiety and depression are connected. And then you can see all the physiological symptoms and illnesses that are related. And I won't talk today about it. I'll talk about this next week a little bit more in detail about how being stuck in some of these states leads to a lot of chronic illnesses. But you can see there that it's a big list. And I think if you ask any doctor, and they'll tell you, and there's research that says that about 90% of the visits to a doctor are related to stress. So, and right now we're really worried as mental health professionals. We're worried about how this pandemic is going to affect our mental health and our health in the long run. We might not see it right now. Right now we're experiencing the event, but we might see it after all this over and we find a new normal. We are going to see how all this has affected us. So what to do to come back to safety? There's different things that we do. We can listen to music. And again, we have to be selective with our music. It's music that puts you in a good mood. It's music that allows your body to feel safe. So I work a lot with teenagers and sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, I have my playlist, but it's my sad playlist. So I play it when I'm really sad to get even sadder. And that's not the whole point of this. It's really, can I find a certain kind of music that just, no matter what kind of mood I'm in, I listen to it and it just brings me back into a better state. For some people it's food. And I know there's a lot of shame right now that's going along with people trying to manage their emotional state by eating. But if you have very few resources to regulate, and if you have a history of a lot of distress in childhood, it's very likely that food is one of your ways to cope with emotions. Because when we're little, there's not a whole lot of options that we have. So food is accessible and our chemistry in our body changes when we eat. So it's about being mindful, talking about mindfulness, that when I do go and reach out to eat something, that I check in with my body and be like, why am I doing this? This is just my way of trying to manage what's going on inside me. And can I take a little bit of time and just sit with that emotion and see if it'll pass? We exercise. And by exercise, I really just mean taking the time to stretch, to maybe just walk around the block. I'm not talking about lifting weights and running a marathon. I'm just talking about moving your body and whatever that means. Even if you're not able to move your body because of your physical conditions, really, can I just stretch my arm? Can I just kind of sit a little bit more straight? Whatever that might be for you, but doing it and doing it mindfully, that's something that I'm doing. One of the things that I often tell people is that when we wake up, if you look at a child, if you look at an animal, the first thing that they do is they stretch. But us, we're so busy, we're just worried about what am I gonna do as soon as I turn off the alarm and jump out of the bed, that we forget to do that. If we just take 2 minutes to actually take time to stretch, it gives that body that opportunity of say, I'm awake, let me do a check-in with how my body's feeling, let me stretch it out and notice how good it feels to stretch it out. Just doing those things can make a huge difference in how your body's feeling and how your day might go. You can dance, connect with others, and right now we're limited in the way we do it, but being able to talk to other people. And right now we're at home. And the thing is that our brain gets used to seeing the same faces, so they don't have the same impact. So if we can try to have conversations, you know, in video with other people, even if they don't live with us, at least once a week, where we can have another face, we can hear a different voice, and those that live in our household is going to help quite a bit. You play with your dog. If you have animals right now, pets, it's a wonderful way to help you regulate your system. Animals are great at regulating themselves. They don't stay stuck in any of these physiological states. They're able to come back to safety. And if you have an animal, if you have a dog, I have a big dog. I have a German Shepherd, and I love listening to her heartbeat. It just has this calming effect of like, oh, let me listen to it. And again, it's just we're physiologically wired to connect to another human being or another being in itself. It could be an animal, and our physiology will start sinking in and picking up on how the other's feeling. So you can use your animals for that. People use video games. If you do it mindfully, and again, it's about mindfulness, as we were talking earlier, is saying, I'm gonna go and play. Because right now I'm noticing that I'm getting very uneasy and I can't find my spot. So I'm gonna sit with that for a couple minutes and then I'm gonna go and play. It's about really noticing and obviously not spending your entire day doing it, because then we're avoiding, and avoiding doesn't make the feeling go away. It's waiting for you when you end whatever activity is that you're trying to do. People use alcohol and substances to do that. And that in itself could be a completely different presentation when we're talking about how people try to cope with difficult emotions through different types of addictions and substances. And social media. That's a big one, I think, for many people, to constantly be checking social media to check out of what is going on. But a lot of times that's only adding more stress because of what people are posting, how much information everybody's trying to share. And it's really about understanding how much information can I take in to really digest it. So being mindful of what has worked for you in the past to bring you back. So some of the coping skills that people had before COVID-19, and then we're having to find out new ways on how to deal with our emotional state now that we are in this situation at our houses with less resources. So before, and this is something that I've been hearing a lot from people, I would go out with my friends, I would go shopping, I would keep busy with work, I would go to the gym, go to the bar, I would travel, and it doesn't mean like far away, I would go to like the next city that it's 30, 20 minutes away. And now we're not doing any of those things. We're having to look for other ways to cope with what's going on. So now that we have this stay-home order, we're having to develop new tools. And that in itself, many times people are still very, very caught up into, these are all the things I can't do. But we have to look at, okay, what other options do we have? When we find ourselves with options, it feels like we have a little bit more of control over things. So having to do walks in nature by yourself or with your pet. Some people are baking, doing puzzles, again, playing with an animal, doing it more frequently. And I saw this quote this morning and I really liked it. I really like this. He's a psychiatrist. He's from Argentina. His name is Jorge Bucay. He has amazing books. If you guys ever want any books that he does stories, and he's really good. He's an amazing storyteller. But he said this, and it just kind of stood out for me, that says, the only fear I would like for you to feel when you face change is the fear of not being able to adapt to change. When we're stuck in how things used to be and want everything to stay the same, we will create more suffering for ourselves. And I think that's an important thing to remind ourselves. There's this term that we use in psychology that is called radical acceptance. And can I accept that this is what it is for now? This is my reality right now. And being able to, at some level, be okay with that this is what it is. And the sooner I do that, the easier it'll be to cope with other things that come. So I know there's been going on some more questions. Somebody's saying that those that have a faith-based prayer can do that. And yes, absolutely. Prayer is another way to find safety, to bring you back, and to help you. You know, we all have different ways of coping. Some of them are still there. One of the things that I've been telling people many times is that everything we do comes back to safety. Everything. It's a big part of what we spend time on when people come to therapy is, do you feel safe with yourself, with others, in your body? And if not, that's the first thing we start working on. Because a lot goes back to that. And whatever we do to bring us back to that state helps, even if those people right now, one example that I've been giving out a lot is that I use my grandmother, and my grandmother passed away a couple years ago, but I used her as a resource to bring me back to safety very, very often. If I can just picture myself back at her house and me sitting inside her house and her couch, and I close my eyes and I take myself there, I can bring myself to a better state. So it's being able to use, we call it internal resources, those internal resources that we have to do those things. And external things will be the things that we do, like the cooking, like the going to exercise. But there's a lot of internal resources that we all have to try to cope with these things as they're coming. And the more that we use them, the frequency, the easier it'll be to deal with it instead of dealing with it when it has piled up. So somebody's asking me about the name of his books. He has several books, and actually, Jorge Bucay, all of his books, I really, really like. He has a collection of books. It's a big book that comes like with 5 or 6 of his books. And he was asked the question at some point, like if you were to put some of your books together that would have the biggest impact, what would that be? And he calls it The Search of Happiness. So it's this big, thick book, but it deals with everything you can think of from birth to death and anything in between, relationships, children, all these things and phases that we go through in life. So I really enjoy his books. And like I said, he's an amazing storyteller. So it's not like you're reading a psychology book. You're kind of like having this story paint out that makes everything make more sense. So now moving on. So we always go back to the basics. So some of the questions that are really, really important is, are you sleeping enough? How many hours of sleep are you getting? Is it constant sleep? Are you waking up throughout the night? Are you having nightmares? When you wake up in the morning, how rested do you feel? All these things really impact your mental health. So having a routine before you go to bed is important. Not watching anything that is too distressful helps kind of keep your body in a calmer state. Some people put essential oils, other people drink tea. But really having this routine where you're preparing your body and your mind to go to bed is important. Are you getting enough sunlight? Those of us that live in Arizona, we think that we get enough sunlight, but guess what? A big number of us are deficient in vitamin D, and we get vitamin D from the sun. We don't go out because it's so hot. And vitamin D affects our mood. If we are deficient, we're gonna feel very tired. It's gonna mimic some symptoms of depression. So it's always it's something that I always ask my clients, have you gotten your vitamin D checked? Just to see if there's a medical reason of why they might be presenting these symptoms. The quality of your eating. Are you eating 3-4 meals a day, depending if you do snacks in between? What kind of food are you eating? Your gut health is so important. The majority of serotonin, which you could say is your happy hormone, that what keeps your mood in a good place, comes from your stomach. That's where the majority of the production of it comes from. So if your gut is not healthy, your body's not gonna produce enough serotonin to keep you feeling at a certain level of, you could say, happiness and energy. So it's important to make sure that you're eating food that are nutritious, and that you might be even taking some supplements, such as probiotics. That's a big one that I always recommend to my clients, is to do some of those things to help their stomach have better health. Are you moving your body? And really, we're not meant to be in one place all day. And it's really about, even if it's small movement, it's really about moving your body. Are you breathing properly? We think we know how to breathe, but we don't breathe very well. So it's about knowing, and I'll go a little bit over this in a few minutes, but it's really about, is my breathing coming from my belly? Not from my chest up here, is it coming from my belly? And if any of you have contact with kids, watch them how they breathe. You see how they inflate their tummy. That's how we should be breathing, all of us. But for some reason, somewhere along the way, people thought that was not nice to stick your tummy out. So now we suck it in, and that affects our breathing. But if we're not breathing properly, we're telling our body that there's something we need to be stressed out about, and it just keeps us more stressed. And are you connecting with others? We're social creatures. So how much connection, that depends on the person, but we need connection with others at some level, either through text message, phone calls, video calls. We need connection. And if we don't, our mental health and our physical health are gonna start showing symptoms of that isolation. So what is under my control? And I really like this graphic because it focuses on what is going on right now. So what can I control? My positive attitude, how I follow the CDC recommendations, how, my own social distancing, me following up on what is being recommended, limiting social media, limiting the news, finding new things that are joyful or new to me, and finding kindness and being grateful. Those are the things that I'm able to control. And then we have all these other things, right, that we have no control over. Like how much toilet paper is gonna be at the store when I go and shop, or, you know, for how long are we gonna be going through this? How other people are reacting, what other people are doing. If somebody else is following the guidelines, there's a lot of things that we have no control over. So the more that we try to come back to us and focus on what we are doing, it'll be a lot easier for us to try to cope with what is going on at this moment as best as we can. So I wanted to go over a few regulation exercises. So the first two right here, where you have people like touching, they're from somatic experiencing, and somatic experiencing is a modality in where we work with the body to treat trauma and to regulate their nervous system. So we have what we call the 5 exercises, which is where you see the girl. So And it's to find a sense of containment. So you have where you actually just kind of hold your hand and you put your hands there. And literally doing, to me, any of these, they feel really soothing. So I like doing them. And you do it for a couple seconds, it might be a minute, and you just kind of notice how it feels. You're not squeezing your hands, just kind of feel the containment of your hands, of feeling a little bit of weight on them and just feeling how it feels to have your head being held by you. And then you go and you just kind of turn it and you do this, and you're really touching like the bottom part of your head. And you just do that for a couple minutes too, a minute or two. And you just kind of notice what your body goes through. And this is one that I also like. I can notice like my breathing is getting deeper just doing this. And you do that for a while. And then you can switch it up, and then you do your forehead and you put a hand on your heart. And you can notice that. And then you can even notice like jump from like feeling a connection from my head to my heart. Almost like if it was like some sort of string going up and down. And I can imagine that. And I can just notice, I can feel my heartbeat. I can notice my breathing. And I do that for, again, just a minute or two. And I notice how sometimes my shoulders automatically want to drop, and that's a good sign that it's just kind of like, oh, this feels kind of nice. And then I switch it up and I keep my hand on my heart, and then I put a hand on my belly. And I notice that too. And how that starts feeling a little bit more settling, and how I can start noticing my breathing a lot more, and how I'm more conscious of my tone of voice and how fast I was talking. So again, it's just about, can I bring myself back to this body, and just can I offer it some safety? And then I keep my hand in the bottom one in my stomach, and I go back and I touch my head here. And can I keep my head there? Again, just noticing how it feels to have that support. And you start noticing how it seems like it starts to relax. And touch does an amazing thing for us as human beings. So right now that we cannot touch each other, or we can't be hugging each other, we can still hug ourselves. So this is an exercise that Peter Levine, who is the one that developed somatic experiencing, does very often. And he just says, you go in and you just kind of do this self-hug, and you notice how that feels to be able to do that for your body, to be able to contain it and just say, and he says to say, this is my body. I am safe right now. Or I'm taking care of it. And just noticing what that is. And again, we're looking for even the smallest change. If it's in your breathing, your tone of voice, your eyes getting softer, your facial expression feeling less tense, your shoulders dropping, whatever that might be, is just being able to notice these shifts inside. And the other one is from the EFT, emotional freedom technique. That's what it's called. And we call it tapping. That's where most of us know how to do the tapping. And it's based on Chinese medicine, that we all have pressure points. And we are touching those pressure points to bring more regulation to our nervous system. So I put a picture there of all the pressure points. And when we do this, we look at this part of our hand, and we're gonna tap it with like 2 or 3 fingers. And while we do that, there's a phrase that we say. So like for in this case, it'll be, even though I'm afraid, or even though I'm stressed out, I completely accept myself. So you're not saying you don't be stressed out. You're just saying, I completely accept myself. So you go in and you just kind of start tapping here. You can say it in your mind. You can say it out loud. And so even though I'm stressed, I completely accept myself. And then you go in here. Even though I am stressed, I completely accept myself. And then you go underneath your eye. Even though I'm stressed right now, I completely accept myself. And then you go underneath your nose. Even though I'm stressed right now, I completely accept myself. And then you're right here, your shin. Even though I am stressed right now, I completely accept myself. And then you go into your collarbone. Even though I am stressed right now, I completely accept myself. And then you have here on your side, your underarm, you hit there too. Even though I'm stressed out right now, I completely accept myself. And you finish on the top of your head. Even though I am stressed at this time, I completely accept myself. And you can do that round 3 times or so. If you can ask yourself how stressed out I am at the beginning, and you can do a scale from 1 to 10. You can say right now I'm at an 8. You do it about 3 times and then you check and see. You might say, you know what, now I'm like a 7, or maybe I'm a 6. And again, these are things that you do throughout your day. You don't wait until you're very stressed out to do them. This is why this works, because you're continuously doing it. If you're trying to do it one time and don't ever do it again, and you remember to do it when you're really, really stressed out, it's very unlikely that it's going to work. It might work to a certain degree, a little bit, but it's the practice. It really is the practice that helps when you're doing these exercises. I feel much better. So what helps us when we are in hyperarousal, fight or flight? And these are just a few recommendations, ideas. So we talked about firm and predictable touch. You can do it yourself. You can kind of squeeze your arm, your body. You can tap it, and that will get you out of that. Soft fabrics, anything that is soft and fuzzy. You can squeeze a stress ball, exercise, listening to slow or classical music, nature sounds, looking at neutral colors, slow breathing, yoga, mindfulness, taking cold showers, or taking, one of the things that I shared with someone recently was that when we are feeling like dysregulated, go and jump on the shower and alternate between water that is hot and cold for 30 seconds each, and make sure that you end up with cold water at the end. That's the thing to remember. And do it for a couple minutes, and it'll help your nervous system regulate. It'll force it to regulate because it's trying to adjust to the temperature. So it'll start forcing it to regulate everything else. And then doing, running. If your anxiety is really high, almost like if you're having a panic attack type of deal, it sounds counterproductive, but if you start running in place or doing jumping jacks, you will force your body to get out of that state. Obviously, there's a lot of factors, but for the most part, depending on the person's health and, you know, and other situations, but if you do that, because when we are in a panic attack, our heart rate goes so fast that running in place or doing jumping jacks, it's a different pace. It has to be lower than how our heart rate was when we were just having the panic attack. So it helps us to readjust. And I'm not asking, again, not this extreme way of running in place or jumping jacks. It can be very slowly, but if you start getting into the rhythm, you'll start regulating your system too. Trying any way to change your body temperature, splashing cold water on your face, holding an ice cube, putting your face on the AC, drinking cold water. A lot has to do with the temperature of your body, and again, trying for your body to find regulation through it. What helps hypoarousal when people are in shutdown and freeze? Light movement, and it could be stretching. And we're not asking about somebody going and running. We're just talking about somebody keep moving. If that means I'm gonna go and take a slow walk, or if I'm gonna go and stretch, or I'm just kind of extend my body in place, then that's what it is. Dancing, singing. Singing does an amazing thing for our nervous system. Brushing your skin, that sensation of it will also help. Rocking in a chair, listening to fast music. And here we want to get some sort of movement to get us out of that state. touching different textures, looking at bright lights, bright colors, eating crunchy things, spicy things. Will get us also for our system, anything that has to do with movement, to get some sort of energy into our bodies. Is really important when people are in this state. So when people are feeling depressed, as one of the things is like many times they don't want to move, but that's the thing that I always tell them, if anything, just keep moving, whatever that means for that person. If it's just, I'm gonna go walk outside the mailbox and I'm gonna come back to the house and that's the movement I get for the day, I'm okay with that. But keep moving, don't stay in one place too long, because that only adds more to that shutdown of your body. So thank you so much. So we're running to, and I'll go and answer a few more questions. My information's there. I post a lot on social media about trauma. My accounts are all about trauma. And actually today I'll be posting about regulating the nervous system, because I've been doing this, that I'm creating a post about it. But if you want to learn more about it, I have that available, and I do graphics to make it understand a little bit more. Let's see. Some people are sharing that, you know, there are a lot of different fruits and nutrients and teas and all those things. And yes, there's a lot of things that people can try. I'm just always very careful with suggesting like very specific things, because what if somebody gets sick? What if somebody's allergic? And then I'm the one to blame. So I always tell them, you know, if they want to try them, if they heard that it's okay, but I don't make that recommendation directly, because people tend to believe everything I say, and I'm just like, get it wrong. So no, I don't do those things, but I know that it helps for a lot of people, you know. Tea, there's different teas that I take that help me, but you know, you gotta find what works for you. I think for the most part, that's, thank you everyone. Those that are saying take care, thank you. Thank you for being here, for taking the time out of your day to spend it with us. That's appreciated as well.
So Millie, there's some questions on the chat part.
Chat part, okay. Let me see. That's what I'm looking at.
Yes. So what happens when you're being triggered in your environment constantly, such as abusive relationships, on top of going through menopause?
You know, that's, I wish there were easy answers for that. You know, when it's something physiological like menopause, and there's a lot of changes that come from it, it's very interesting. There's a lot of studies that say that if you were unhappy in your relationship and women hit menopause, it's very likely that you're going to divorce. And it has to do with your hormones. There's less tolerance for a lot of things because of the hormonal imbalance. So obviously I would recommend to seek help, to help find better hormonal balance when people are going through it, because then that's adding more to what is already going on. And when we're talking about relationships that are abusive or there's domestic violence, there's so many components. I can't speak to you directly. I'm always very careful about giving advice about that, because I can only speak in general terms. I don't know your situation. I don't know all the dynamics that are behind it. I don't know what kind of resources you have. So the best option that the best thing that I can say is, you know, to seek help There's a lot of organizations that deal with helping people who are in abusive relationships. And maybe it just might be a call asking, you know, what programs do you offer? If I were to live this relationship, what are some of the things that I need to be mindful of? What things that should I be preparing for? Because every situation is different. So obviously we've been talking a lot about safety and people staying safe, and that's what it comes down to. Can you find some sort of sense of safety in your house? And it might be that you take longer showers, and that's when you get to have a little bit of peace of mind, and that's the safety you get to have for that day. But like I said, every situation is different.
All right. Millie, I don't know, maybe you know this, I don't. It says, if you have SUD, said, could you use homeopathic alternatives? Okay.
If you have,
it says SUD. Could you use homeopathic alternatives?
you know,
I don't know what that is, so I have no idea.
and that's what I'm trying to think, because to me, SUD is subjective units of distress. So
That's what I thought, yeah.
I don't know if that's the acronym that person was thinking.
So, okay, so I do have a question for you from me, Millie. And this is a question that I did ask at the beginning. It's, you know, we're all kind of getting comfortable being at home. We are getting relaxed. And last week we were talking about, it seems that we're more relaxed now. We're kind of accepting our new normal, but now states are opening up. And then we're like pushed to change from our new normal to a new normal, going back outside of our home, our safety net that we have created for ourselves. So what are the things that you can recommend that we do as individuals, as humans, to prepare ourselves, based that we already have a lot of stress, we already have a lot of anxiety, we already have that that fear of we had the fear of knowing that it was coming, but now it's here. So what are the things that you can recommend besides all the things that all the tools that you provided today that were for us excellent? And what else can we do mentally to really be ready to incorporate ourselves into the new normal?
To me, as you've seen, I work a lot with the body, and I would say listen to your body. And when I mean listen to your body, I mean check with it throughout the day before you head out of the house, and notice what's going on inside. What sensations am I noticing? Is my heart rate going up? Just thinking that I'm going to drive the car and I'm heading to work. Like, notice those things and do check-ins throughout your day to know if you're going to need a little bit more breaks to step out or to go and isolate yourself because of everything that's going on. It's really about what are you doing throughout your day to help you? Because that is the new reality. We're going to go back, and that's what we're going to have to do. The more that we do in between, the better we're going to be. And anxiety is really what it is. It's comes from fear, and it's fear of many things. So the more that we sit with it and we attend to it and just tell ourselves, you know, I'm doing the best that I can. I am safe right now in this moment, and keep reminding ourselves and checking in with the body and not letting it accumulate. If I go in and I don't think about my body until the end of the day, I assure you that when you get home, you're not going to be able to sleep.
All right.
Those check-ins. I ask my clients to put an alarm on their phone and to do it at least twice every hour.
Millie, thank you for that answer. And I found what is SUD. It's a substance use disorder. For the other question. but I don't find it. I don't remember what it was.
No, they were saying if the homeopathic,
Okay, yeah. Mhm.
here's
If they can use, right?
Mhm.
and that really depends on, again, what kind of substance it is, for how long they've been using it, what is the frequency, what is the history of the person. There's so many, and that's why I always say that psychology is an art and a science. And I mentioned it last time. It's science because we have a lot of things that are proven now, but it's an art because I have to shape something that is specifically for that particular person. What's going to work for that person, I don't know until we sat down and we figure it out. And we know for sure that 90 to 95% of the people who have some sort of substance abuse issue, it stems from trauma. They're trying to cope with the feeling. And if we only treat it at the surface, which we've been doing for too long, and that's why we know those programs are not very effective many times, it's not going to do much. We really need to go to the root of the cause of everything and really try to deal with the pain that is causing that. And if anybody's ever interested, there's an amazing book by Dr. Gabor Mate, and it's called In the Realm of a Hungry Ghost, and it talks all about addictions. And I find his books amazingly insightful in what are addictions, how do we help people with addictions, and what we can do. Obviously, it's a lot about what the person wants to do as much as support. We can love someone into changing. It has to come from the person, but every individual is different. So what might work for someone, it might not for somebody else.
Thank you. And I found this one, another question here, and says, how can we help our Latin community better understand mental health concepts?
I have found out when I talk about the body, because I think people are more understanding when I say that a lot of the things that affect our mental health comes from the body. There's this huge misconception of what we think is someone being crazy. And I tell them, I've been working 15 years in mental health and I've never seen anybody that's crazy. So I really don't know what is it that they're talking about. And it might be just kind of opening the door. And I think the more that we talk about, oh yes, I experience anxiety, instead of saying, oh, you experience anxiety or you have depression. I talk to my clients all the time about, like, you know what? Yes, it's something that I will struggle from time to time. The more that we normalize these situations, the easier it will be for people to open up and to talk about them. Is when it just say it's them and not me, and I don't even know what that is, that we're just kind of adding to that stigma. The more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the more we bring it up. And I think the more that we start putting concepts together, because, in Spanish we say, oh, sufro de los nervios, which means, my nerves, but it's anxiety. I mean, if you want to put the clinical term, it's anxiety. The person suffering from anxiety. And families will accept, oh, sí, sufro de los nervios, but they won't say they have that anxiety. So it's being able to find new terminology to open that door and explain to them, why are these things happening? To me, it helps from a biological, because then I explain the brain and I explain the nervous system. And with that, people take the thoughts out, because that's not where it's coming from. There's a physiological reaction that happens way before that. So it's just about normalizing a lot of all these things happen to us.
Yeah, thank you. And I totally agree with you. The more that we normalize that, it's going to be like more acceptable to talk about emotions and all that.
Yes, and I think, like I said, the more that we talk about it, the more that we admit that we are struggling. And I keep telling my clients, I keep telling everyone, because they're like, oh, you're the therapist, you have training. And I'm like, I'm struggling too. I have my days where I can't sleep. I have my days where I watch TV before I go to bed and I can't sleep at night, knowingly that I knew that was going to happen. But there's a part of me that thinks maybe if I fight, maybe there's new information. And it's like, we're all struggling. We will have our good days. We will have our bad days. But I think if we remember that everything is, we call it pendulation. Nothing stays in one place if we allow it to move. So the more that we allow things to move, it'll be back and forth. We really don't get stuck if we allow that movement. It's when we completely run away from it that it all gets stuck. So the more that we accept and we normalize and we validate, it'll be a lot easier for people too to start talking about the struggles that we have every day, because social media paints this beautiful picture that nobody struggles and everybody has perfect relationships. I wish they would post when they had a fight and, you know, their kid ran away from home and all these things. It's like, no, we don't. But what we see outside is not what matches what happens in households. And I wish we would talk more about it.
Thank you so much for that information. I'm looking here for more questions, but I don't find another one, but we have a lot of comments saying thank you for your information. That was a great presentation. And one comment that it's so common right now in the chat is that the question that Floribella asked you about how to go back to the normal life. And a lot of people are saying that they're feeling that anxiety that you are saying, that they don't feel prepared to go back to the normal life, to this new normal life that
new normal. Yeah. And that's the part where, you know, we're all going to learn what that is. I don't think any of us know what that's going to look like, and we don't like uncertainty. We like to know what's next, and this situation is forcing us to be okay with that. I've been talking a lot about people. There's some people who do very well with uncertainty, and I'm going to start throwing more information. If you have a secure attachment, which means that your parents were attuned to you and you always knew what to expect from them, you will be more likely to tolerate uncertainty. If you have any of the other attachment styles, ambivalent, avoidant, disorganized, you're less likely to tolerate uncertainty, and we're in uncertain times. So you will have a harder time dealing with that. So it kind of like everything's tying together, but it has to do with, have I had enough safety in my life to go out and face the world with this uncertainty? It really comes down to that. So it comes back to how can I say people, how can I fill my safety cup up with safe things so that when I go out into the world, I have enough safety that I can tolerate the uncertainty that happens outside.
So Kenya, I think that Millie, that was great. That's a great presentation. A lot of great comments, and of course, like we were talking before, I think that your presentation was for me today. So I really appreciate that. And of course, every single day we're learning more about ourselves with this webinars, with the tools that you are all providing us. We are able to manage a lot of our emotions as well. So thank you so much for those tools. And I know that next week you were talking about something that really excited me as a community health worker myself. I'm really glad that you're going to be talking about stress and health and how you're connecting that not only for ourselves, but also for our clients, our patients that we work with. So I'm really excited for next week, and hopefully we're all able to connect. And again, thank you so much for the time that you have spent with us today, and that you have put into all the effort. A lot of people are asking us for the slides. Those slides will be part of the link for the recording for today's session, for today's webinar. And Millie's gonna be we don't have the slides. We're gonna be recording them today. So Millie will be next week again at 3 p.m. with us, Arizona time. I'm sorry, but it's 6 p.m. Eastern time for those of you that live in the East Coast. Again, hopefully this webinar has provided you some tools, some information, how to go ahead and continue, reassume our life. And I know that's going to be difficult because we are all struggling to think about a new normal with all the fear or all the anxiety that we're facing. But I know that we're so resilient, and I know that we will be able to go forward, and we'll be able to be strong physically and mentally once we're out in our community. We'll remember everything that we've learned in this webinar, so we're going to put it into action with our customers, our clients, our patients, whoever we're going to be working with. This information that we're getting here is just providing us that opportunity to learn how to not only address our own needs, but also address the needs of our community. And we thank our presenters. And today, Millie, you were excellent. And hopefully next week we all can connect again and start looking into the stress and how to connect it into chronic diseases, into our health, into our body, and everything in a different perspective. So Millie, with that, I just want to say thank you. I know, Kenya, that we have all the resources for people also that were asking about. Millie, you made some recommendations. Of course, Millie's information is there. You can always contact Millie. She is a licensed counselor here in Arizona, and she can provide that service for you all. But also, you have national hotlines, and we have other information that you can also tag into and call your local mental health providers, your health departments. Reach out whenever you feel that you have a need. Please reach out to anybody that you can, to your friends or your family, but always don't stay quiet. I think there's been for years we've stayed quiet and we have not reached out. And once we come to address the need that we have, and a lot of times it's a little bit late, it takes a longer to get out of that situation. So let's learn together. The last question we'll talk about, how do we communicate? How do we provide the Latino community with more education so we can talk about mental health in a more an open way? I think that's not only the Latino community, but we know that the Latino community is kind of difficult to talk about that. Let's just continue talking it out in the open, because this is part of who we are as humans. And we all need this information, and we all need to be connected to others as well. And we've learned through this COVID-19 that we need that connection with the other humans, with our friends, with our family. More than ever, we've learned, and we not treasure those moments that we used to have, that we don't have right now, and that hopefully we'll be having in the near future. Again, thank you, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Kenya. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.